The unblemished red heifer is going to be sacrificed soon, quite possibly this year. But when? Welcome to part 6 of things you probably haven't heard about the 2024 total solar eclipse. Remember in part 4, we talked about how Elohim created the heavens, the earth, and everything in them in 6 days. Elohim rested on the 7th day and made it holy. Elohim commands us to rest on the 7th day, set it apart, and keep it holy. It's actually the 4th of the 10 commandments. To this day, Jews and believers all over the world observe Shabbat, resting and refraining from work on the 7th day of the week, which is Saturday. Shabbat is the Hebrew word for Sabbath. There are 9 special Shabbatot, or Sabbaths, throughout the year that coincide with special events or holy days documented in Scripture. Shabbat Shuvah is the Sabbath of return, also known as White Sabbath. Shabbat Shira is the Sabbath of song. Shabbat Shekalim is the Sabbath of shekels. Shabbat Zachor is the Sabbath of remembrance. Shabbat Parah is the Sabbath of the red heifer. Shabbat HaKodesh is the Sabbath of the month. Shabbat HaGadol is the great Sabbath. Shabbat Chazon is the Sabbath of prophecy, or the Sabbath of vision, also known as Black Sabbath. Shabbat Nachamu is the Sabbath of consolation. Shabbat Parah, the Sabbath of the red heifer, falls on the Sabbath prior to Shabbat HaKodesh, in preparation of Passover. Numbers chapter 19, verses 1 through 22 addresses the ritual of the unblemished red heifer known as Parah Adumah. Kohanim are descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was the first to complete the Parah Adumah according to the Lord's instructions. The passage in Numbers details how the Kohanim and the Jewish people used the ashes of the red heifer to become ritually clean just in time for the Korban Pesach, the Passover sacrifice. To this day, Jews and believers all over the world read something called the weekly Parsha, or portion of the Torah. Many times, these weekly parshas or portions line up with biblical events that occurred on God's calendar and coincide with events happening in real time here on earth. Friday, March 29th, 2024 at sundown until Saturday, March 30th, 2024 at sundown is Shabbat Parah, the Sabbath of the red heifer. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, the weekly Torah portion, Parsha Parah, could coincide with or precede the Parah Adumah, the red heifer ritual. If the Parah Adumah is not performed prior to Passover, which is 14 days from the next new moon, it still could be completed just in time for the fall festivals. In 2 Chronicles chapter 7, we see King Solomon offering a sacrifice of 22,000 head of cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats to dedicate his temple to the Lord. King Solomon and the entire assembly of the children of Israel celebrated the dedication of the temple for 7 days. They continued celebrating as they observed the festival of Sukkot for another 7 days. If the Parah Adumah is completed in time for the fall, we could see a festival of dedication. No one knows the day or the hour that the unblemished red heifer is going to be sacrificed for the purification of the priesthood, for the preparation of the temple, and for the purification of the children of Israel. But one thing can be for sure: time is ticking. War has already been incited. The unblemished red heifers are aging, and with aging comes the opportunity for blemishes, injuries, or worse. As of the conference held by the Temple Institute on March 26th, 2024, there are no plans for the Parah Adumah to be performed prior to Passover. According to a summary of the conference, which was held entirely in Hebrew, the Israeli government has stepped in and called off any plans for the unblemished red heifer to be sacrificed prior to Passover 2024. Nevertheless, only time will tell. Rest assured, if it does happen, we probably won't hear about it until a few days later, considering all that has transpired since October 7th, 2023. The last red heifer was prepared and accomplished by then High Priest Ishmael ben Piavi around 60 AD, just 10 years before the destruction of the Second Temple. The ashes of that red heifer were sufficient for the next 300 years. In part 5, I shared that Maimonides prophesied that the 10th and final red heifer would be brought and accomplished by none other than the King, the Messiah. We are currently in the Hebrew year 5784. It's speculated that 165 to 240 years are missing from the Hebrew calendar. If it's 165 years that are missing, then we are currently in the year 5949. If it's 240 years that are missing, we're currently in the year 6024. The millennial kingdom is at hand. Will the unblemished red heifers currently in Shiloh and the upcoming red heifer purification ritual be the catalyst that leads to sudden destruction? Come back for part 7. Until next time. Bye.